Okay, I'm not sure if things are working. They have a new interface, and it's a bit of a problem. Okay, let's see. Okay, it seems to work now. Yeah, you have the classic YouTube and then this newer one, and this newer one is a bit different, so I'm struggling a bit in getting it working. Yeah, hello everybody. Back here with a new live stream, and okay, let's move this a bit to a direction because it's in the microphone. You can see microphone here. And last week we started with this project about blue. We showed a lot of things in blue, so maybe you have a question. Maybe you saw the last stream with blue too. Maybe you have something. Hey, Rob, show how this works. And otherwise, we just fly around today. And some people ask me if I was at the NAMM show, but I'm not at the NAMM show anymore. My last one was in 2017. And it was so noisy, it was terrible. I could hardly do any demo. And so that was a waste of time and a lot of money. And of course, you can watch me here on the live stream. You don't have to go to the NAMM show. You can ask me questions here and everybody can see me. So, of course, if you create hardware, then the NAMM show is more important than if you create software, because software, you can download a demo version and watch, for instance, these live streams. So someday maybe I go back, but for now it takes 2 weeks. Sometimes people think, okay, you go to NAMM show, but it takes 2 weeks. 1 week to be there, and then 1 week to recover, because there's a big jet lag always hitting afterwards, which is because of the time difference. And of course it's busy there. You long days, and it's fun to do, but it's a bit too far away. And so I decided to do the live streams after the last NAMM show. I could figure out how it worked with the live stream. And yeah, here we are. Now I'm doing already quite some times some live streams. So here we see BIT again. And that's the reason, because we have today, or this week, I received a bank, and the I cannot pronounce that, Sanhunea project, Bank 1 it was, and he sent also a Bank 2. And today I could check a bit of the presets. We need to check them on volumes and tuning and on tagging, but already some very nice presets, and I played one. It's a nice preset. Some very nice sequences on board, and let's take a bit moving some weird tones. So I did make a few here the stars, so that I could find them. And I use them now when I play the music. I use them together with the other stuff from last week. We did have some blue going around, and now I play on top of it. I play BIT with the new sequences. So this is another one, very nice, very warm sounding. So yeah, there's some more. So we need to check them here on tuning, on volume, and if the presets are tagged. So here you have the tagging, what you can have. And yeah, for instance, this one has a pad, and it's of course not a pad, so this tag should be then removed. And these are little things we check, of course. There are some nice lead sounds. Pads. Cover your ears, that's a nasty one indeed. So we hope to make them very soon available for BIT. It's about, I believe, 67 new presets. I think we first will make this bank full so that it has these 128 presets. What we always do, of course, you can have more presets inside BIT, but the problem with that is, of course, that you lose a bit of overview. So you see the introduction bank has 124 presets, but if you go to banks which are already full, so here you see Jamal 128, and then we stop. We could add more, but then you also could use it for program change if you like to use program change. Essentially in one folder could be 256 presets, could be possible, but we keep it this way. So as mentioned, so this Sanguinia, I cannot pronounce it, doesn't matter, that we'll have very soon, and most likely depending on if we can upload a new version, you will always can find it back. Then once we don't have a regular update, you can find it back on the home page, and then let's show it to you. So if you go to the raw Papen homepage, here you see, then you have here in sound sets early bird presets, and there you see we have some raw kick things. We have here Predator 2 presets. I think they are not yet inside of it, and you see go to, this is blanked out, and so here we could add these presets for BIT. So the early bird presets are presets which are not yet in the plugins. Makes me that to show you something else. 1 second. So if you would log in to robpapen.com, you would have home, my details. In my details, there you have your address. You can change your password. You have my products. So you see here I have the products what I have on an own test account. Frequently asked questions we have for Mac or PC. Then you can create a support ticket, and here expose is something which you don't see, which is experimental. Here an idea we had. So what you see is home, my details, my products, frequently asked questions, and support. And if you go to the home, you can see that we recently, this week, we are busy with updating a lot of plugins. We have some small bug fixes in all of them. So in this month we fix a lot, and then you see we upload then and show here. For instance, Bluetooth, we did a upload today for the PC version. The Mac version will follow, which has some small bug fixes, and maybe bug fixes which you don't see yourself, or some people might see it. It's, for instance, let me go to Bluetooth. Is, for instance, these up and down arrows were a bit too big, so we made them a bit smaller. To my personal taste, they're still a bit too big, but it's okay. And then we had here that in this filter, the parallel mode was not in the right position. So sometimes there are very small things, but that's what you can do. So if you log into the raw Papen page, go to the home. Normally the home pops up, and here you can see which products are uploaded with bug fixes, and sometimes with new presets. So That can happen as well. Of course, we have the plan, but that takes a bit more time to someday to have somewhere in the upper screen a button which you can click and check yourself if there is an update. So that makes it a bit easier. Okay, I'm checking here. Are there some special techniques used in those new presets? Not really. I think it's mainly, BIT is pretty straightforward in terms of synthesis. It's really the basic subtractive synthesis. And looking here, he uses quite a lot of the modulation matrix, which changes the sound over time. So here, pitch LFO. He uses the pitch LFO to change the volume of the sub-oscillator. So interesting things are happening here. So a bit like an organ sound. So here, these are things, and I can hear a bit. So that's what we do. We check the sounds on the tuning. Sometimes it happens that people hit by a coincidence the semitone. So then the sound, if it would be only one oscillator, you're playing the sound and suddenly you have +5 semi, and you don't hear it while making the sound. You don't hear that you have +5 semi. So for instance, what I would check then also is I would increase the release a bit because it clicks a bit at the end of the sound. So I can hear that also in the filter. So these little things I do just to little things to correct the sound so that you don't have weird things or weird volumes, all that things. Okay, some bass sounds. And I use also aftertouch. You see, aftertouch uses for the unison detune. So very creative bank, and already the other one was very good. This other project one, and this one is in the latest version of BITE. So maybe you watch this live stream and think, oh, I don't have this Sanjuina project 01. Then simply log in and download the latest version of BIT, run it, and then next time you start up BIT, you have these new presets. And we had even more in this last version we also had the case that we had the vowel filter. So here, okay, so okay, I'm going up here in the chat room because we were talking about if you had an idea for this week and maybe you joined the last stream, and I told you guys, yeah, if you guys have then questions about Bluetooth, write them down, and yeah, today you can ask them. So I'm going to the chat room and I see, are you coming to Superboost? I'm not sure. Superboost is pretty much, again, also hardware. Seems to be a bit of software there, and so I'm not sure. Maybe it's good for the vibe. Never been to Berlin, so maybe it's an idea to be there someday. Oh yeah, about Punch 2. Yeah, we will go to Punch 2, a default preset for creating your own kick. Yeah, sure, not a problem. I will show that. There is a question about the lately bass. So that is, we have. So maybe I should go to Punch because that's pretty easy to explain. So if you go to Punch 2, okay, then you have the introduction bank, which is inside the here, introduction bank, and there you have a default preset. Default preset essentially all has only the bass drum. And then you click here, pad 1 is the lowest C note, which you, by the way, also can play tuned. And then you click here on this little symbol. So this edit symbol, essentially you go to the advanced page. So if I can go this way to the advanced page for pad 1, or I can click on the symbol to go to the advanced page. And then here we have the bass drum, and essentially here it's all essentially already a kind of default. Then you can select here the model. You have all types of models which do different types of bass drum synthesis. Then classic are essentially samples from the 808 and the 909. And then you get the punch, which are our own collection of samples, EDM kicks, but also more, let's see, real bass drum. So these are samples, and you see if it's sample based, you still can edit a lot. So, but maybe you want to think about, okay, I want to keep it to the bass drum models. Then, for instance, you have model 1. Now, and then you see it's already a nice setup. Then you can change here the settings, for instance, the decay. And then you can hear that a bass drum is essentially very, very fast pitch glide. If you hit the real drum with a beta, the skin does very fast to very slow. So it's what you do essentially is simulate the fast movement go to a slow movement. So if you have this too long, okay, wrong. You see, this is too long, and even you can change the curve. Listen to what the curve can do. And end is where the kick ends. And you could set it to tuned. Then it goes, and you see here, up here the values. Now it ends to a D sharp 1. So it goes very slow. And the cool thing is, yeah, you have this is the tuning, but you still have the volume. And sometimes people use a compressor to make the kick longer. So here, but we have a hold here. So this really boosts this first, as if you would have a compressor on it. So here you also see the curve. And the tone curve is high or low, totally different sound. And of course you can have a different waveform here, sinus, or you can have a user wave. It's oh yeah, that could be that the manager. No, yeah, but you still can select the preset here in the lift. So it's the default preset, and then you can add it. So yeah, check out the video. I should make more videos. And what crosses my mind, by the way, we work very soon on a smaller update for Punch 2. For instance, if you have tuned here, that would be nice maybe to have the tune displayed not only up here in the readout, but maybe also here, so that you don't have to look up for which tone you're hitting. So it's a very, very deep synthesizer. And of course here, if you look here in the this type of the pad is now bass drum, and then we have all kind of folders. So there are, for instance, already hip hop kicks, and you pick simply here a preset, another one. So there are, for the type bass drum, there are already some and up here. So there are already many presets, which we call drum kit presets, are on board in Punch 2. So you have a drum kit preset, which contains all the 24 pads, the sequences, the slides, whatever. And then you have for each type of sound, so for the bass drum, snare. So if I go to snare here, I can pick a snare, and also could, for instance, sample-based snares. Okay, then I of course need to pick a preset. Light piccolo. So so much on board. About the kick, no, it depends. I mean, that's the point with drums. Drums, the tone. If you hear a tone, it's the resting tone. So never the starting tone, but where this pitch glide, which goes down, where it does rest. So if you go here to again the bass drum, and I go to hip hop, I can have some presets which have, for instance, a bit long F sharp. Then the end is here. You see up here. Look in the upper part, F sharp. That's the first pad is then tuned, and mostly for hip hop it's in this range, F sharp 1, G1, and so it's very important, especially if you listen to hip hop in a car. It can be a big difference if the kick is resting on the note G or the note A. So there's a lot of difference in terms of a pitch of the bass drum. And you see here we made it longer using the holes, so I even could make it so long, very long. Yeah, it's always the end of the note, yeah. Because you see it starts, and the start is really this making the click. So if I go up with the start, you see the click gets sharper, and I can show that a bit more if I change the curve here a bit. So it starts very high. And now it's too much of a squeak, so, and then if you go too high, then it has a different tone. But of course it's not a real good click, so I changed the curve. So this is, yeah, and if you go in your deduction bag here, the hip hop, if you have a groove, is really. You see, this kick is not a sample, this is really synthesis. The tempo is too high. This should be then, of course, a totally different tempo. F2, where is F2? Ah, here it is, tempo. So tempo. So maybe too low, but so I need EQ, a tuner to know the note for sure. Well, you can use the readout. So in this case, bass drum 1, it's not tuned, and I can tune it to press here tuned, and then I need to go down. So now I have a F sharp 1. So you don't need a tuner. You simply click on tuned. This one you click on. The end determines the tuning, where it ends, and look up here in the readout. So then you can find it. So it depends, and that's of course cool if you have then a punch 2, for instance, for hip hop, and you think, okay, this is a nice beat or a nice kick, but I want to have it on a different tuning because my song is better. And then you can say, okay, let's tune it a bit up, and G1. Okay. Okay, so I'm checking here the live stream. Okay, we had, so I had one question now answered, I think, about punch and working with the kick. Yeah, it's a bit easier. It's always spend some time on it, and I need to make more tutorials about it because, for sure, a punch 2, if you know it, it's pretty much straightforward, and you only need to know a few things. And sometimes people say, okay, this is so empty, but that's the reason why it's so empty is because we keep the space also for the more complex things. So, for instance, if you see the sample page, if you have a sample, you have a filter LFO, a filter, the tuning of the sample you can change, an amplifier, a stereo swap, which goes from left to right, although you don't use it that often with a bass drum. But you see the page for editing is one of the built-in samples is much more in terms of features than some of the models. So if you go to model 4, it's again different than model 1. So therefore, it always appears in this middle section. And sometimes, some pages are a bit more fuller, and otherwise it's a bit less full. And in total, there are 31. Listen well, 31 pages in Punch 2 in terms of types of sounds. So that's a lot. It's really a huge drum machine. And so we continue on Punch 2 with sound design, and very soon also some new features, which I told a few live streams back about the audition mode, that we also will get a sequence mode so that you can change it over time. Okay, so the other question was from Winston and the lately bass. Yeah, I had that one in BIT. That's of course a choir, but if you go to BIT and you have this, and here's the lately bass in 2 versions. Darker one, so that's more the taste what you can have. Of course, if you go to this one, you always can say, okay, let's have a bit less filter envelope. And essentially, the lately bass is a 4-operator bass sound from and it sounds a bit like a single saw waveform. It's very similar to it. There's a bit of taste of I call that. So here you see this one, and I think what we did here is essentially used one oscillator, but it has a sub oscillator, which is also a saw. That's of course not something you see on a real analog machine, is that the sub oscillators most of the time is sinus waveform or square. Most of the time is square. So you see it's having a saw below it. And what makes a sub oscillator different from using a second oscillator, because that's sometimes people think a sub oscillator makes subtones. No, if you have a sub oscillator, the sub oscillator is simply 1 octave lower than the oscillator where it is connected to. So therefore, you see a sub oscillator, you cannot detune it with fine tune because it's connected to this oscillator 2. So the sub oscillator here is connected with the oscillator 2. So that therefore, if you open this, it's very tight. It sounds very very tight. There's no wobbling thing inside the sound, because if you would use a second oscillator and do the same, each note would be sound different. So let me show this to you, and then you also understand the sub oscillators. So here I can show very clearly. That's nice. Here you see this is the sub oscillator, which is 1 octave lower than the oscillator 2. That's all. That's why they call it a sub oscillator, not because it generates sub waveforms or sub magic for big basses. No, it's simply the oscillator and below it 1 octave lower. That's why they call it a sub oscillator below the average oscillator. So the sub oscillator does have a volume control, but doesn't have a tuning control. Digitally, essentially, it would be possible to do this, but if you go to the classic analog synthesizer like a Uno 60 or Poly 6, I think that one also has a sub oscillator. Or for instance, the SH101 has a sub-oscillator, but you cannot detune the sub-oscillator because essentially it's a sub from the oscillator. So if I, essentially you can hear it's a saw with 1 octave lower, also a saw. So it's essentially the lately bass is a very short saw and it's 1 octave lower saw combined. So if I would do this the same with this one, okay, and if it has 3 running, you see now it's also 1 octave lower, but each note is a bit different because the drifting is on, so the oscillators 1 and 2 drift from their own. So this is very different compared by using only one oscillator with the sub-oscillator saw. It's more tight. So that's why this lately bass I use this sub-oscillator, because I know originally it is the this FM, and I think they had as waveform maybe also already a saw. I'm not sure, but this is the way I recreated this sound in BIT. And of course, originally it is a FM sound, but yeah, this one is pretty close. And I made a dark variation. So if I want to make this one in in Bluetooth, I had to do the same thing. Only Bluetooth doesn't have a sub-oscillator. So let me see. And if I'm not wrong, I simply took a sample, listened to the sample, and really did reproduce it in BIT. So it's pretty close, what I can recall. Not sure if the sample is still on my system. Maybe we could do this next week, that I really show the original sound. But yeah, I use it here also a bit. Let me see. This one is Predator, now Bluetooth. Here I could say I pick again BIT. I play it for you now in a track. So here I go and play this bass sound. Lately bass. So first so here it is. It plays down here. This one, this part, this is then BIT. Oh, tempo is too low. Should maybe be 1 octave lower, so it's maybe a bit too high in. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna do this very fast. And the dark one is better, I think. So the dark one is a bit better. So it's 1 octave too high. Then I need to do here some trick. MIDI. Transpose setup. -12. Okay. Let's see if that sounds better. And of course you can do this to your own taste, so it's just an example. So just by tweaking, so what you can do with this preset, if you own BIT and you want to make it a bit more tasty to your own song, what you could do is then increase or decrease the volume of the saw oscillator and fiddle around a bit with the cutoff or the envelope. So let's do this now. and maybe you notice there's no chorus or nothing. So this is really clean in the track. It's there. And maybe I should leave out a bit of the low end from this guitar FM sound, which is in this track. That's anyhow a trick. So this sound, this guitar sound, although you maybe think it doesn't have that much of low end, there's more low end than you think inside this one. So you could use the synthesizer for this. Of course, you also can do some EQing. So and then the bass essentially even comes better out of the track. So if you cut off the low end from the instruments which you don't do the bass part of your song and only keep the bass for the bass, it's really a great trick for having the mix much better. So okay, let's play again here. And maybe you notice this is totally dry, this bass. There's no additional chorus, and you could use chorus, but sometimes this makes the bass a bit too swirly. So let's play with chorus on and off to show you the difference. So, and what I want to tell you with this is that if you then have maybe a bass sound which has chorus, sometimes it sounds better in your track without chorus. So let's play now with chorus, the bass. Okay, so it makes it a bit swirly. I would pick it without it to keep it more tight. So I put it on, yes, and now the chorus off. And what you also hear, this other sound from Blue 2 pushes away this bass, because this sound from Blue 2 has a lot of low energy inside of it. So let's mute it. So in the mix I would take some low end from this sound because it pushes away the real bass in this track. So now again I play this bass without the chorus, which I like then better. Sorry, I'm moving around. So if I put now on the chorus, it's possible, but makes it a bit more muddy. So it really depends on your taste, how you want to have it. I like it in this case, I like it better with the bass without chorus. So once again, this is without chorus. And now I put in the chorus. Yes. Okay, yeah, that I could do. Let's see if I can have. So somebody suggests that I should play the sound now, but then without not using the sub oscillator for creating this lower octave, but use the first oscillator 1 octave lower, and this to show that the sub oscillator is more tight in sound. Okay, so let's see how I can do this very fast. So I need to put on that one. I need to put off this one. So what I will do is I put this one on a MIDI latch. Latch to MIDI. Okay, why doesn't it do what I wanted? Oh, I'm in the wrong channel here. So I need to be, of course, on Predator 2. Bit, not Predator 2. Here you see, there it is, MIDI latched. So I need to go down with that volume and put on the oscillator 1. Let's see. So this is with the okay, so let's start, and then I start with the normal one with the sub-oscillator, BIT with sub-oscillator. I shut it down, and then let's play this bass with the oscillator 1 added to, which is also 1 octave lower. Is it good? I'm not sure if I did that fully, so no, it needs to be this. Okay, so now it's okay. Oscillator 1 is 1 octave lower, also the saw wave, and so let's try it out. So first we throw up this sub-oscillator, we'll play it with sub-oscillator, and then we play it with the, I can make it a bit longer here, of course. So, oh no, that's not possible, because I transposed it. Okay, so first with the sub-oscillator. Sub-alloys are gone, and then with oscillator 1. Again, the sub-oscillator now. You see the volume? Volume down, and with oscillator 1. Yeah, if you listen carefully, you can hear that this sounds more tight than having the oscillator 1 with the saw wave 1 octave lower. So let's start with then the other way around. So sorry for moving each time this because I don't see the track. So we start now with oscillator 2 and the bass, and then I switch to the sub oscillator. Sub oscillator. Sub oscillator gone, and again oscillator 1. So you hear that because each oscillator has its own life. That's what we did in BIT. Is the drifting. What you see drift here is that the analog components drift, and that's what we added to BIT. So it has a very natural drifting, just like a real analog machine. And for me, the example was the Minimo, how that one drifts. That was for me the example. And that makes that then the sound with the bass is a lot different than if you would use a sub-oscillator, because the sub-oscillator is perfectly the same each time. So it's because it's connected to this oscillator. Yeah, BIT is very good for creating, very easy to use, because most things are, essentially all things are, first of all, you don't have all these subpages. So here we have one subpage, and then, that's there it is. Then it's a bank manager, but it's really a classic virtual analog machine with a lot of nice, cool features. Okay, I'm going back to the chat room. Somebody's asking about yeah, it's a different sound. So with the sub oscillator, or using as alternative another oscillator. Somebody does ask a bit about the sequencer page options in Bluetooth. It's a good one. By the way, you can check also last week live stream about Bluetooth, because there we also discussed this sequencer. So we have here inside Bluetooth a sequencer next to an arpeggiator. So the arpeggiator has a 32-step arpeggiator, but the sequencer is then essentially just like a classic sequence which you would have in your modular system. So each you have a step, a tuning, velocity you can have, and then we have some additional controls. So you also can control the filters here, so not only the tuning and the velocity, but also separate the filters. And the other thing is that we have the normal view, which is here, but also wave view, because you can also set it this way that each oscillator has a different waveform on each step. And the best thing for that to show is in the sequencer bank. So we go to the bank manager and you go here to the sequencer. Let me see where it is. Sequence sounds. And by the way, somebody asking if there is also a sub-oscillator. Yes, here's the sub-oscillator. Each oscillator has also sub-oscillator. If you go to the right, you have a square waveform. If you go to the left, you have a sinus waveform. So that's something that's also cool. So you have two options in Bluetooth. Where's the cutoff in Bluetooth? Yeah, here it is. It's down here in the filter, if the filter is active, of course. So yeah, it's two filters, and it depends how you connect the Bluetooth oscillators together with the other features, because you can do, in this case, you see there's a bit of FM synthesis. C modulates F, but also A and B, which is goes to an output, and the output of oscillator A could be a filter or directly to the FX. So it's pretty modular in the routing what you have inside Bluetooth. So here we see the oscillator 1 is used, and then you have the destination of oscillator 1, which can be filter A, B, and yeah, you see, even to all FX. That's now coming back to the sequencer, if you see here, sequence sounds, that's a bank which you could check. If you go back more to the last presets, there you see that we use a bit of the newer features. And here you see that the sequencer, you see oscillator A, it shows spectrum 18, but if I go down here, I have the sequence normal view and wave view. If you go to wave view, you see the first step is a sine. Then you see step number 3 is set, and set means that what is selected here. That means that then on step 3, it's to set, it means that it's spectral 18. And you see on step 5, there's a percussion 6, is one of these samples is playing. So in the sequencer, you have two pages where you set the tuning, and so I could say, and then the wave view. A lot of sets. So oscillator A, you see all the 6 oscillators, you can have different waveforms. So here on 15, it uses a marimba, or it's a clave, I think. So here I also can use the right mouse and then pick here, for instance, a very different snare. So now it goes to filter. I could say only FX. And the funny thing, oscillator A has its own envelope. So if I go to oscillator A, it's now closed. So now the envelope isn't working. So this can be very different from the other oscillators. And I see an oscillator F. You see there the waveform doesn't change, and I can change the ear. So it has wave sequencing and normal sequence. This is a combination. And by the way, what we have planned for this sequence, because someday we will release Blue 3, and that will take some while, but this is planned to have Blue 3. And then we make this sequencer page, just like, for instance, this XY page, much bigger. So that's easier to add it and change the sounds. So then we also have planned what we will do in Blue 3 is that people can throw in their own samples. And for instance, we have then also a different easy page. Now the easy page is like this, but I have some other plans about having an easy page, and which is, I think, a better idea to do. So and because easy page is more for doing so without going deep. So if I would stay here, I can say, okay, let's change the filter. Still possible. But if the filter isn't used here, you don't hear any FX on it. So depends on what is active inside Blue 2. Then, of course, we will have the bank manager, which is now the old bank system. So each bank has 128 presets, which is different from what we use now in all the latest releases. We made it the case that all presets are single files. So we will go then also to single files. And so if you maybe are confused, if you have Blue 2 and maybe, for instance, Predator 2, you notice that each work different. And for Predator 2, there's a preset of a tutorial where I explain how to use with the presets, and I made also recently one for Blue 2, so that you know, oh, it's a bit different. And the Blue 2 uses essentially the very original FXB bank system, which came over from, let's say, the hardware. In the hardware, you had one bank in MIDI, which was 128 presets, and that's they call the bank. So that's also what you see here. For instance, in Blue 2, if you go to sequence sound, you see also a lot of empty spots, which are default. So, but essentially, this whole block is one bank. And if you go to Predator 2, if you have here select a different bank folder, then essentially is a folder on your computer with all single files, all single presets. Now you see this R bank is full on that one. Some examples. So a lot of this R bank in here, and this is the RPUs. But yeah, that's the reason, for instance, that you have then this sometimes that you have, if you go to pad 3, that you see, hey, there's a lot of empty spaces. What is happening here? Well, nothing went wrong, only this bank is not yet fully full with all the sounds. So okay. Of course, in terms of synthesis, Blue 2 is triple times in synthesis compared to BIT. And sometimes you want to go deep, sometimes you want to go basic analog, and therefore we have these different types of instruments inside of our bundle. Each have their own focus and their own things. There are sounds which you can create with BIT, which may be a bit harder with Blue 2, or with Blue 2, you do different things. And so that's all why we have different types of instruments. So Blue 3 is on the table. We need to write down a lot of ideas about it. I have also some ideas about adding some additional synthesis, doing some new experimental stuff, because essentially Blue 2 is the story about combining synthesis together in one synthesizer. And I did show that also last week. So check, if you missed last week live stream, it's the one from 9th of January. It's in the playlist, live streams. Check it out. It was a very nice one about Bluetooth. So yeah, the other thing which we have in mind, okay, let's start Cubase here, is add track, instrument, is Blade 2. And also there I need to brainstorm a lot. So here I'm checking out Blade. And Blade this is the small version. Okay, there should be a big screen. Here we go. Because this is the normal screen. Excuse me. And of course, Blade was at that time the first synthesizer which we had was the XY pad, and it can do some totally insane sounds. Very. So I think we will rework the interface, make it more dynamic in terms of that you see things changing. So I have a lot of interesting ideas. It's of course a synthesizer which is harder to control because it changes the harmonics. You have here the harmonics which you can see. So we really can make some very interesting sounds with Blade, but we need to rearrange the user interface, make it a bit more different than what you see now. We'll have different sizes, but also a different way that you can change also the waveforms here, compare it a bit with Predator 2. Maybe that we make it the case that you can analyze a longer sample and use that for the harmonic content. There are some wild ideas for Blade 2. So yeah, that's, of course, we don't know when it comes out because it takes time to develop. We had a lot of time. We worked, I think, half a year, more than half a year on Punch 2, and still not ready. We still want to add some new features to it. So sometimes it's hard to predict how long we work on a new project, but that's on the table. So Blade 2 and Blue 3, these are things we like to do and focus on this year, next to releasing new presets, of course. And today I already started with the new presets for BIT, and it's even more coming out for this. So plenty cool things which will arrive. Okay, guys, it was nice again. If you maybe missed it for partially, you always can watch it back. It's in the playlist on the YouTube channel called Livestream, and you always can watch it back. So I hope to see you next week. And then, yeah, if you have any questions about any products, yeah, write it down, let me know. And thanks for watching, guys, and keep well.